The storm had come faster than anyone expected, sweeping across Isla Nublar with a fury that defied predictions. Thunder roared in the distance, and lightning cracked through the sky, illuminating the dense jungle for brief, terrifying moments. Rain poured relentlessly, drenching the island and creating rivers of mud where paths once lay. Amid the chaos, a crackling radio transmission broke through the storm, barely audible over the howling wind. Attention all personnel. The last ferry is departing in 30 minutes. Repeat, the last ferry leaves in 30 minutes. Evacuate immediately. A group of 4 stood in a dilapidated observation post, their faces pale with fear. They were stranded, left behind by the evacuation team. The park ranger, a rugged woman with years of survival experience, grabbed her flashlight and map, her voice firm but urgent. "We don't have much time. The dock is about 2 miles through the jungle. If we hurry, we can make it." The others hesitated. The scientist, a nervous man clutching a soaked notebook, stammered, "But the raptors, they'll be hunting in this storm." The ranger nodded grimly. "They will. But staying here is a death sentence. Let's move." The group plunged into the jungle, their path illuminated by flashes of lightning. The teenager, a sharp-eyed boy with a camera slung around his neck, took the lead alongside the ranger. Behind them, the scientist stumbled over roots, and the wealthy investor, dressed in an expensive but now useless raincoat, muttered curses under his breath. The jungle was alive with the sounds of the storm, wind whipping through trees, branches snapping underfoot, and the distant growl of predators. As they pushed forward, the teenager froze, his flashlight beam catching deep claw marks gouged into the trunk of a tree. Nearby lay the remains of some unfortunate creature, torn apart and partially eaten. "They're close," the ranger whispered, her hand instinctively reaching for her flare gun. Then it came a shrill, bone-chilling screech. The group spun around, their flashlights cutting through the rain. In the distance, glowing yellow eyes watched them from the underbrush. A raptor, its sleek body glistening with rain, stepped into view, teeth bared in a silent snarl. The ranger shouted, firing a flare into the air. The raptor flinched at the bright light, giving the group precious seconds to run. The terrain grew treacherous as the rain turned the dirt path into a slick river of mud. The investor slipped, tumbling down a slope and twisting his ankle. He cried out in pain, but the ranger hauled him to his feet. "No time to complain," she barked. The teenager pointed ahead, his voice strained. "There's a river. We can cross it using that fallen tree." The group scrambled onto the slick, moss-covered trunk that stretched across the rushing water. Behind them, the raptors gave chase, their snarls growing louder. Halfway across, one of the predators leaped onto the tree, its claws digging into the bark. The ranger turned and aimed her flare gun, firing just as the raptor lunged. The bright flash sent the creature tumbling into the river below, but its packmates were still close. The group made it across, panting and soaked, but the dock was still far away. Lightning lit up the clearing ahead, revealing their destination, and the unmistakable silhouettes of raptors pacing between them and safety. Thieves circled ahead. The scientist said, his voice trembling, "They're waiting for us." The ranger nodded, her eyes scanning the jungle. "They're smart, but so are we." She turned to the scientist. "You said you studied their behavior. How do we throw them off?" The scientist hesitated, then spoke quickly. Raptors respond to distress calls from their own kind. If we mimic one, it might confuse them. The ranger gave him a sharp look. Then do it quickly. The scientist cupped his hands around his mouth, letting out a high-pitched series of screeches. For a moment, nothing happened. Then, the raptors paused, their heads tilting in confusion. The group seized the opportunity, breaking into a desperate sprint toward the dock. The ferry's horn blared, cutting through the storm like a beacon of hope. They could see it now, its gangplank extended, ready to depart. But as they approached, two raptors leapt out from the shadows, blocking their path. The ranger stepped forward, her flare gun raised. "I'll hold them off," the teenager shouted. He grabbed a broken branch from the ground and stood beside her. "We'll do it together." The scientist and the investor ran for the gangplank as the ranger and teenager faced the raptors. With a defiant roar, the ranger fired another flare, and the teenager jabbed with his makeshift weapon, forcing the predators back just enough to buy time. The ranger yelled, grabbing the teenager's arm and pulling him toward the ferry. They scrambled up the gangplank, the raptors snapping at their heels. The ferry crew pulled the ramp up just as the predators lunged, their claws scraping against the metal edge. The ferry pulled away, and the group collapsed onto the deck, gasping for air. From the safety of the ferry, they watched as the raptors prowled the dock, their glowing eyes fixed on the retreating vessel. Lightning illuminated the scene one last time, revealing the jungle behind the predators. A dark, untamed wilderness filled with countless dangers. The ranger sat up, her voice steady despite her exhaustion. "I made it, but they'll never stop hunting." The teenager looked out at the island, the camera around his neck forgotten. "They belong here," he said quietly, "and we don't." As the ferry disappeared into the storm, the island faded from view, its secrets and dangers hidden once more.